Hi, fourth grade. This is Ms. Kovarik. We are on Unit 7, Lesson 6 today, which is called Declaring Independence. We're going to read a chapter called Shots and Speeches, and here is your vocab. The first word is retreat, which is a verb, and that is to move back or away from danger. A casualty is a noun, and that is a person killed or injured during battle. Ammunition is a noun. Those are bullets, shells, and other objects that are used as weapons, and they are shot from guns. Score is a noun, and this is another term for 20, so like a group of 20 things. Fortify is a verb. That means to make a place safe from attack by building defenses, so building up walls, building up trenches to help protect yourself. An ambassador is a noun. And that is a person who represents the government of their country in another country. So if someone from the United States had to go to a different country to do something, they would be an ambassador for the United States. Declaration is a noun, and that is an official statement of something. Abstain is a verb, and that means to choose not to vote. Levy is a verb, and that is to demand a fine or tax. And implication is a noun, and that is a possible effect or result that might take place in the future. Our big question for this chapter is, what big decision did the colonists make as a result of shots fired in Massachusetts and speeches delivered in Pennsylvania? What a difference a day makes. By the time the sun came up on April 20th, 1775, the British Army had retreated from Concord back to Boston. They had suffered more than 200 casualties and were now surrounded by militia. Things went from bad to worse when the militia set up cannons on two hills overlooking Boston Harbor. One of the hills was called Breed's Hill, the other was Bunker Hill. The British generals were worried. If the militia had cannons up on the hills, they might be able to fire on the British ships in the harbor below and sink some of them. The generals decided that they had to drive the militia off the hills. It would take time to put their plan into action, but 2 months later, on June 17, 1775, the British launched an attack. Hundreds of redcoats began marching up Breed's Hill. The militiamen at the top of the hill waited nervously. A commander named William Prescott knew his men did not have much ammunition. They would have to make every shot count. This is a picture of what I just described. So this is at Bunker Hill. You can see the redcoats and the militiamen. The militia waited and waited and waited. Finally, they opened fire. Scores of British troops fell to the ground. Surprisingly, the redcoats were forced to retreat. The British attacked a second time, but again, they were beaten back. They attacked a third time, and this time they were successful. The militia had run out of ammunition. Now it was their turn to retreat. Today, this battle is known as the Battle of Bunker Hill. However, that is an unusual name for a battle that was actually fought on Breed's Hill. It is possible that the confusion about the location of the battle was caused by a lack of familiarity of the area. The two hills are near each other. In fact, a British officer who mapped the battle site mixed them up on his map. It is also possible that Prescott had been ordered to fortify Bunker Hill, but fortified Breed's Hill instead, when he realized that it was the more desirable spot. In one sense, the Battle of Bunker Hill was a victory for the British. They achieved their goal. They drove the militia off the hill. In another sense, it felt more like a defeat. Is it really a victory if 1,000 men are killed and wounded compared to 500 on the other side? The British knew they could not afford to lose so many soldiers, even if the eventful outcome was a victory. While the Battle of Bunker Hill was raging outside Boston, 56 representatives from all 13 colonies attended the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia. Thomas Jefferson came north to represent Virginia. John Adams, Samuel Adams, and John Hancock made their way south from Massachusetts. Benjamin Franklin, a native Bostonian living in Philadelphia, did not have far to travel. The making of a government. As months of discussion and debate continued, some decisions were made. Many of these decisions were based on the belief that a peaceful settlement with Great Britain was now impossible. The Second Continental Congress began to function as a government. They made important decisions. They issued paper money. They set up a postal service. They appointed generals and ambassadors. They agreed to the creation of an army and put George Washington in charge of it. This army would eventually be called the Continental Army. Many members of the Second Continental Congress thought that the time had come for the colonies to declare their independence. They wanted the colonies to become a new nation. Others thought there might still be a way to patch things up with the British, and they wanted to try to do so. These members of the Continental Congress were not the only ones who were divided on the question of independence. The people of the colonies they represented were divided as well. And this is a picture of George Washington. He became the commander of the Continental Army. A little common sense. One man who may have done more than anyone else to convince people to declare independence was Thomas Paine. Paine was an Englishman who had moved to Philadelphia only a few months earlier at the suggestion of Benjamin Franklin. Franklin thought Paine could help the Patriot movement. Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense. It was published in January 1776 while the Second Continental Congress was meeting. And here is Thomas Paine. Paine believed that monarchy was a foolish way to run a country, mankind being originally equals in the order of creation, Paine wrote. So how could any one man claim the right to rule over millions? So basically he's saying he thinks that a monarchy is foolish. There shouldn't be one person in charge of a whole country. Paine argued that the colonists should separate from Great Britain and form a republic, a government made up of elected representatives. He told his new countrymen they had an amazing opportunity. They could cast off government by kings and replace it with something much, much better. And here is a quote from that pamphlet. We have every opportunity and every encouragement before us to form the noblest, purest constitution on the face of the earth. We have it in our power to begin the world over again. The birthday of a new world is at hand. For God's sake, let us come to a final separation. And here are pages from Common Sense. Common Sense became a bestseller. Copies were printed in all 13 colonies. Selections were printed in newspapers. Those who could read studied the pamphlet. Those who could not read listened while it was read aloud at an inn or coffee house. Common Sense convinced many colonists that it was, in fact, time to declare independence. A final separation. By June 1776, most members of the Second Continental Congress were ready to vote for what Paine referred to as a final separation. Thomas Jefferson, a delegate from Virginia, was asked to write an official declaration of independence. His job was to explain why the colonies were breaking away from Great Britain and why it was necessary for them to do so. Benjamin Franklin and John Adams reviewed Jefferson's draft. They made a few changes, but overall they accepted Jefferson's work without reservation. On July 2, 1776, the members of the Second Continental Congress voted for independence. On July 4, 1776, the members voted again, this time on whether to accept Jefferson's Declaration of Independence as the document that outlined the reasons for their desire to be independent. So this document here, the Declaration of Independence, that outlined all the reasons that the colonists thought that they should not be a part of Great Britain anymore. No one voted against it. One colony, New York, abstained. The Declaration of Independence was approved. In the first part of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson wrote specific ideals that he and his fellow colonists wholeheartedly believed to be true. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So unalienable means you can't take them away. So in this document, they said that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are 3 rights that everyone in America deserves to have. Jefferson believed that the role of government is to protect these rights. However, if a government failed to protect these rights, if it actually took these rights away, then the people had the right to rebel and set up a new government. And here is the Declaration of Independence being signed by all those men at the Continental Congress. Jefferson argued that this was what the British government had done. In the second half of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson presented a long list of unacceptable actions the British government had taken. It had levied unfair taxes, taken away the right to trial by jury, and quartered British troops in colonial cities. For all of these reasons and more, Jefferson wrote, the colonists had no other option but to declare independence from Great Britain. Happy birthday to us. Ever since 1776, the 4th of July has been a national holiday in the United States. On this day, every year, Americans celebrate their independence by watching fireworks, singing patriotic songs, and attending picnics and parades. Although it took another month to get all the signatures on the Declaration of Independence, Americans still celebrate Independence Day on July 4th. No simple solution. The colonists did not initially have a national army ready to fight on their behalf. The Continental Army, as such, did not yet exist. In June 1775, the Continental Congress appointed Virginian George Washington to create such an army. Until then, the army had consisted of a loosely organized collection of militia units from New England. The implications of what had happened at Lexington and Concord were far from clear in the days following those battles. While there had been plenty of outrage, it had taken over a year for independence to be declared. In fact, after the battles in Lexington and Concord, some patriots had created a flag called the Continental Colors. This flag captured the red and white stripes from the Sons of Liberty flag with an image of the British Union Jack superimbossed on it, indicating some degree of continued loyalty to the British government. And this is that flag they created. This is part of the British government flag, and then these represented the colonies. All right. Number 1, the colonial militia set up cannons overlooking the blank. What was the body of water that they were looking over? Was William Prescott right to be worried when the British launched an attack on them? Do you think the Battle of Bunker Hill was a victory or a defeat for the British troops? Support your answer with evidence. Number 4, the members of the Second Continental Congress were positive about going to war with Britain. Thomas Paine believed that, so in his common sense, what was he believing? What was he trying to persuade people to think? Thomas Paine wanted a blank government. What does the Declaration of Independence outline? And then you're going to look at the word beliefs here, which is another word for ideals. So ideals, beliefs, which of those is a synonym to those two words? Number 9, which is not one of those 3 rights that Jefferson feels cannot be taken away? And number 10, what was the pamphlet published by Thomas Paine in January 1776? Okay, skills. You are going to do a little bit of subject-verb agreement. So use this example here. We have the merchant is our subject, and then the action they're doing is traveling. So you're going to put those words together and make the verb agree with the subject. So in this case, we would say the merchant travels, not the merchant travel. So you're going to do the same with merchants. So is it merchants travel or merchants travels? The child dress. So is it the child dresses or the child dress? The student studies or the students study? Poets write or poets writes? So just write the answer on the line. Okay, for the next part, I gave you all of the words that are in this section. So perfect and imperfect, practical and impractical, patient and impatient. So when we add that im to the word, it means not. So these words would be opposites. Polite and impolite, convenient, inconvenient, complete, incomplete, capable, incapable, and then active, inactive. So you're going to read the sentence and fill in the blank with the correct word. Be sure to use the definitions. They are all here, and I even use the word in a sentence for you. So use the meanings, use the sentences, plug in the missing word. Number 5, even though the cake I baked was uneven and looked blank, it tasted really good. My PE teacher says we should exercise or be blank for at least 30 minutes every day. Number 7, the grocery store is right by our house, so it is very blank to stop on the way home. It is considered blank and rude to whisper in front of someone. My teacher's computer shut off because it was blank for too long. And then the last thing you're going to do today is practice your spelling words. So we've got 10 spelling words: surrender, declaration, valiant, grievance, independence, monarchy, representative, victory, incident, and militia. And I also gave you the definitions here if you don't know what the word means. You're just going to choose one activity to practice your words so you're prepared for your spelling assessment. And that is all for today. Please get on Zoom if you need any help, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, Adams.